you continue to make that statement, which is absolutely untrue. You stated that I have supported privatization. I have never supported privatization. You cannot find any bill that I have ever supported on privatization of Social Security. I oppose it, and I support protecting Medicare. It is the mayor who supported cutting $500 billion out of Medicare to create a new entitlement program. And I can assure you that hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, and many seniors, particularly those on Medicare Advantage, will be negatively impacted. We have a deficit commission that the President has authorized or commissioned, and that's going to deal with the issues of entitlements, and they're going to make recommendations to us in December. But we do have real challenges, particularly with Medicare and Medicaid. On the entitlement side, we have to deal with it, not put our heads in the sand. And by the way, Mr. Steny Hoyer, the majority leader of the House, came with John Callahan. He endorses raising the retirement age. He has said it. When he talked about John Boehner, Mayor Callahan wouldn't even address the issue of who we would vote for Speaker during our last debate. He wouldn't answer the question. Very important vote in the first vote. But I think we have to have a very honest discussion. We can talk about pay-as-you-go. Well, you know the stimulus bill, $862 billion, more than $1 trillion in financing. It wasn't paid for. They waived the rules on pay-as-you-go. Every time they want to do something, they call it an emergency, or they waive the rules, and they run up debts. They simply want pay-as-you-go to raise taxes. They want to basically increase taxes permanently so that we can pay for current tax law. That's what they're doing with us. It's a charade, and we all know it. Again, I oppose privatization. I want to make sure Social Security is there for you and for the next generation, as well as Medicare. We need it. And we have to have an honest conversation about that, and I look forward to receiving the findings of the President's Commission.
Thank you both. The next question, do you support raising taxes on families making more than $250,000? And this goes to the Congressman first.
Sure. On the issue of extending the current tax rates, I support extending all of them. And this is where my opponent and I, John, we have a very real difference of opinion. You know, and it's shameful that the United States Congress is not active today. The Speaker of the House let us adjourn, without dealing with this very significant issue. Because of this, come January 1, taxes on income, on families with children, on married couples, on investment, on savings, they're all going to go up. On inheritances, they go up. And the Congress ran out of town without dealing with it. That's wrong. That's wrong. And you know what? We should extend that current tax law to all individuals, all income tax rates. You're going to hear from my opponent say, oh, it only affects 3% of small businesses. Well, what they're not telling you is those two highest income tax rates. The income that's going to be taxed, half of it is coming out of small business. This is a direct assault on small business in America. The very people we need to grow our economy, to grow jobs, we need, now we're telling them we're going to raise their taxes. We're going to raise taxes on capital gains. We're going to raise it on dividends. Now we're going to raise it on income, as my opponent wants to do. He wants to raise those taxes. He wants to do that. It's going to slow down economic growth. We need certainty. We need stability. The American people are demanding that. And that, more than anything else, the failure to enact those current tax rates at the current levels is what's doing more to drive this uncertainty and economic chaos. I'm hearing it from people everywhere I go in this community. Why is Washington not dealing with this serious issue? Why is the EPA out of control? Everywhere I go, I'm hearing from people on that issue. Making it difficult for people to earn a living, an honest living. So that said, we need to maintain these current tax rates for everybody. It should be done now.
Mr. Mayor, what Charlie has just said is that he wants to give the tax break to millionaires and to billionaires. A tax break that will cost this country $700 billion of increased deficit. Now, $700 billion might not seem like a lot of money to Charlie Dent. I guess when you've already increased the debt by $3 trillion, it might not seem like it, because he's never talked about how he's going to pay for that. That's reality, folks. He wants to borrow more money from China, increase our debt. $3 trillion is $10,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. That's the facts. And he wants to borrow more money from China to give a greater tax cut to millionaires and to billionaires. Those are not my priorities. I think we should extend the Bush tax cuts for 98% of this country. I don't think we should put a further burden on our kids and our grandkids with further deficits to give a tax cut to millionaires and billionaires. He talked about the 3% of the businesses that will be impacted. And it is 97% of small businesses will not be impacted by rolling back the taxes on the wealthiest 2%. Let me give you an example of one of those 3% of the businesses that Charlie's talking about. PricewaterhouseCoopers, which grossed $26 billion last year, is one of the small businesses, quote unquote, that Charlie thinks should get a tax cut next year. And he thinks that your kids and your grandkids ought to pay for it. And I think that's wrong.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our next question comes from a gentleman who identifies himself as an expectant father. And he would like to know, could you share your thoughts on the child tax credit and the suggestion that it be cut in half? Mr. Mayor?
Which child tax credit? I'm not sure which one he's referring to, but I would not support lowering. Is this for a dependent? Is that the issue that he's talking about? Okay. Well, as a father of 3, I certainly would not support lowering the tax credit for dependents. I think that that is important, and I think we should keep that in place. And I would not support decreasing the child tax credit.
Congressman?
Sure, I think you just heard from my opponent, and you understand why he's inexperienced. You know, the so-called Bush tax cuts included a child tax credit. It went from $500 to $1,000. Because Congress failed to deal with this issue of extending these tax rates, you know, that child tax credit will be halved. It will go from $1,000 to $500. You say you support the Bush tax cuts. That was one of them that was just addressed in that question. So, of course, you know, people talk about the rich all the time, but he talks about small businesses, Price Waterhouse. Nearly every small business in this community is organized as either subchapter S, a partnership, or a proprietorship. And I can assure you these people don't consider themselves wealthy. As I said, half of the income is going to be taxed. It's coming out of small business. And we need them to drive this economy. He can talk about Price Waterhouse, but he's ignoring virtually every small business in this community and across America is going to be impacted. Again, this child tax credit is important. It's pro-family. And if we don't, by not extending those current tax rates, that tax credit will be halved, and that's wrong. We should maintain it. I'll do so again as a member of Congress.
Can I clarify?
You're going to have to use your closing time. Our next question is also about the domestic economy, and this goes to the congressman first. Would you support an increase in the federal minimum wage?
Well, the federal minimum wage, I did support the increase a few years ago. As you know, the rate is at $7.25 per hour. I supported it at that time, and I thought that was appropriate. It's finally been implemented, so I have supported the minimum wage. Again, the big issue with this economy right now is making sure that we grow jobs. And truthfully, what's happening in Washington, I've seen the most anti-business agenda I have ever seen. I mean, please. I mean, when we talk about all these, not just the tax rates, but we talk about national energy taxes like my opponent has supported. He criticized me for voting against a bill that would have raised $22 billion in taxes on oil and natural gas produced in America. I mean, people were paying attention. He says he now opposes cap and trade as a candidate, supported this as a mayor. I mean, I just don't understand where he's coming from on these types of issues. And I think that we have to have greater clarity on health care.